After the crash, I lay motionless in my hospital bed. Machines breathed for me, monitors beeped in rhythm. Doctors said I was in a deep coma, completely unaware. But they were wrong. I heard everything. I heard the executives whispering about my shares. I heard so-called friends discussing my inheritance. I heard nurses talking about me like I was already gone. Then one evening, a poor black janitor walked into my room and said something no one else had. Not pity, not greed, just one honest sentence that made my frozen heart tremble. The night of the accident, I had been leaving a charity gala where I was the guest of honor. Cameras had flashed, people had applauded, I had smiled the practice smile I had perfected over 30 years in business. At 52, I was the CEO of Hayes Development Corporation, one of the largest real estate empires on the East Coast. Forbes had featured me twice, politicians sought my endorsements, young women cited me as an inspiration. But when my driver turned onto the highway that night, a freight truck lost control and slammed into my sedan. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and I, the woman who controlled billions, suddenly controlled nothing at all. I woke up in darkness, not the darkness of sleep, but something far more terrifying. My mind was sharp, alert, screaming, but my body refused to respond. I tried to open my eyes. Nothing. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing. I tried to scream for help, but no sound escaped my lips. The doctors called it a deep coma. They spoke in hushed tones outside my door, discussing brain scans and prognosis. But I heard every word. I was trapped inside my own body, a prisoner in a shell that no longer obeyed my commands. Medical professionals would later call this locked-in syndrome, a rare condition where the mind remains fully conscious while the body becomes completely paralyzed. But no one thought to test for it. They saw a wealthy woman in an expensive hospital bed hooked up to machines and assumed the worst. The first waves of medical procedures and clinical conversations washed over me. Nurses adjusted my IV drip while discussing their weekend plans. Doctors checked my vitals and dictated notes into their recorders. To them, I was a case number, a chart, a body requiring maintenance. But the real torture began when the visitors arrived. I heard the door open and recognized the voice of James Harrington, my chief financial officer. He had worked for me for 15 years. I had trusted him with the company's most sensitive information. "The board is concerned," James said to someone else in the room. His voice was low, careful. "If she doesn't wake up soon, we need to discuss the succession protocol." Another voice responded. I recognized it as my legal counsel. "My shares alone are worth over $2 billion. Without a clear directive, this could get messy. Has anyone found a will? We're looking. But you know, Rebecca, she never planned for failure." They laughed. Both of them laughed while standing over my supposedly unconscious body. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rise up and fire them both on the spot, but I could only lie there listening to men I had made wealthy discuss how to divide my empire. The visitors continued throughout the hours. My so-called friends arrived in waves. I heard their voices dripping with false concern. One woman called my situation a tragedy, while another whispered about my penthouse and what would happen to it. Someone mentioned my beach house in the Hamptons and my art collection as if I were already dead and buried. Someone's phone camera clicked. I realized they were taking photos, not out of concern, but for social media, proof that they had been here, content for their followers. They stayed for less than 10 minutes. As the hours passed, I began to understand something I had spent my entire adult life avoiding. I had built walls around myself so high that no one could climb them. I had turned my heart into a fortress after a man I loved had betrayed me decades ago. He had courted me, made me believe in romance, then disappeared with the money I had lent him to start his business. After that, I decided that love was a weakness I could not afford. I poured everything into my work. I accumulated wealth, power, and prestige. I told myself these things would protect me. But now, lying paralyzed in a hospital bed, I realized the truth. I had built my fortress so well that when I finally needed someone, there was no one inside the walls with me. Every relationship I had was transactional. Every friendship was conditional. Every person who walked through that door wanted something from me, and not one of them cared if I lived or died. I had given up. My body was a prison. My life was a lie. Perhaps it would be better if I simply let go, drifted away, and ended this charade once and for all. Then the door opened again. I expected another executive, another fake friend, another vulture circling my remains. Instead, I heard footsteps that were different from all the others, slower, hesitant, the squeak of rubber work shoes on linoleum. "Good evening, ma'am." The voice was deep, gentle, and carried a slight southern accent. I did not recognize it. "I don't know if you remember me," the man continued. "Probably not, but I was there that night, at the accident." My mind raced. I tried to recall those chaotic moments after the crash. The smell of gasoline, the distant sound of sirens, and something else. A hand. Someone had held my hand. "My name's Darius Thompson. I work here at the hospital, maintenance and cleaning mostly. I was driving home when I saw the crash happen. You were still conscious when I got to you. Do you remember?" I did not. Everything after the impact was a blur of pain and fear. "You grabbed my hand," Darius said. "Held on real tight. I kept talking to you, trying to keep you calm until the ambulance came. I told you everything was going to be okay." He moved closer. I could hear him settling into the chair beside my bed. "The doctors say you probably can't hear me. They say you're in a deep coma and there's no brain activity that suggests awareness." He let out a small breath. "But I don't believe that. See, when my wife was dying, the doctor said the same thing. They said she couldn't hear me, that there was no point in talking to her, but I talked to her anyway every single day until the end. And I believe she heard me. I believe she knew I was there. I felt something shift inside my chest. This man was not here for my money. He was not here for my connections. He did not even know who I really was. So I'm going to talk to you, Miss Hayes. Maybe you can hear me, maybe you can't. But I made you a promise that night. I told you that you were going to be okay. And I don't like breaking my promises. For days, I had listened to people discuss wealth, my assets, my value as a commodity. But this stranger spoke to me as if I were simply a woman who needed kindness. "I'll come back tomorrow," Darius said, rising from the chair. "Got to pick up my daughter from my neighbor's place. She's 7 and she worries when I'm late." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "Sleep well, ma'am, and keep fighting. I know you're still in there somewhere." The door closed behind him. In the silence that followed, I made a decision. I would not reveal that I was conscious. Not to the doctors, not to the executives, not to anyone. I would remain in my prison of flesh, hidden behind closed eyes for one reason only. I wanted to hear what Darius Thompson would say next. For the first time in decades, someone had spoken to me like a human being, and I was not ready to let that go. Darius returned just as he had promised. I heard his familiar footsteps enter the room, the soft squeak of his work shoes against the floor. He settled into the chair beside my bed, and I found myself holding my breath inside my motionless body, waiting for him to speak. "Good evening, Miss Hayes," he said. "Busy day today. 3 floors to clean by myself because Jimmy called in sick again. That man catches more colds than anyone I've ever met." He chuckled softly at his own observation, but I'm not complaining. Work is work. Some people think what I do is beneath them. Mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, emptying trash cans. They look right through me like I'm invisible. I listened as Darius described his day, the way certain doctors never acknowledged him when he cleaned their offices, the way some patients' families complained about the smell of disinfectant as if he were personally offending them, the way security guards sometimes stopped him in hallways asking for identification, even though he had worked there for 6 years. "You know what I tell myself," Darius continued. "Every time I clean a room, I'm helping someone heal. Maybe they don't know it, maybe they'll never thank me for it. But when a patient wakes up in a clean room with fresh sheets and floors that smell like pine, maybe that's one less thing they have to worry about. Maybe that's my way of making a difference. Something stirred in my chest. I had spent my entire career surrounded by people who craved recognition. Every deal I closed, every building I developed, every dollar I earned was documented and celebrated. I had never once considered the people who worked in the shadows, making the world function without applause. Darius shifted in his chair. I see how people look at me sometimes, Miss Hayes. When I walk down the street with my daughter, I can feel their eyes on me. A black man in worn-out clothes, holding a little girl's hand, they don't see a father coming home from work. They see something else, something they've been taught to fear. His voice carried no bitterness, only a quiet weariness. Mia asked me once why people stared at us. I told her that some folks just haven't learned how to see yet. They look, but they don't see. They make pictures in their heads before they ever bother to learn the truth. I had never thought about this. I had lived in a world where every door opened for me, where my wealth and status preceded me like a red carpet unfurling at my feet. I had never wondered what it felt like to be invisible, to be judged, to be feared for simply existing. For the first time in my life, I was seeing the world through someone else's eyes. As time passed, Darius's voice softened. I want to tell you about my wife, he said. Her name was Denise. She was a nurse here at this hospital. That's how we met. I could hear the love in his voice. Even now, years after Denise's death, I had just started working here. First week on the job, nervous as anything, dropped a whole bucket of mop water in the middle of the hallway, made a fool of myself in front of everyone, but Denise didn't laugh. She just grabbed some towels and helped me clean it up. She looked at me and smiled and said something I'll never forget. Darius took a breath. She said, everyone spills something their first week. It's what you do after that matters. And then she introduced herself. That smile of hers, Miss Hayes, I swear it could light up a whole room. He went on to describe their courtship, how he would find excuses to clean the hallways near her station, how she started bringing him coffee during her breaks, how they got married in a small church with only a handful of guests because neither of them had much family left. When Denise got sick, I thought I could fix it. I thought if I worked hard enough, saved enough money, prayed hard enough, somehow it would be okay. His voice cracked slightly. But cancer doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care how much you love someone. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. My heart constricted. I had never experienced this kind of loss. I had never allowed myself to love deeply enough to be devastated by its absence. The last few weeks, Denise couldn't talk anymore. The doctor said she was unconscious, that there was no point in sitting with her, but I sat with her anyway. Every single day I told her about Mia, about what the little one did at school, about what we had for dinner, about how much I missed her. He fell silent for a moment. I believe she heard me, Miss Hayes. I believe she knew she wasn't alone. And when she finally let go, I was holding her hand. That's all any of us can ask for, I think, to not be alone. I wanted to weep. I wanted to reach out and touch this man who had suffered so much and still found the strength to show kindness to a stranger. But my body remained frozen, a tomb of flesh and bone. After Denise passed, it was just me and Mia, Darius continued. 7 years old and already asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Where did mommy go, Daddy? Is she coming back? Why do people have to die? He exhaled slowly. I didn't have answers. Still don't. All I could do was hold her and tell her that we were going to be okay, that we had each other, that love doesn't disappear when someone dies, it just changes form. Darius leaned back in his chair. There are days, Miss Hayes, when I don't know how I'm going to make it. Rent is due and I'm short by $100. The refrigerator is empty and payday isn't until Friday. Mia needs new shoes because she's growing so fast, but I can't afford them yet. His voice grew quieter, but then I come home, and that little girl runs to the door and throws her arms around me, and she looks up at me with those big brown eyes and she says, Daddy, you're the strongest person in the whole world. I felt something break inside me. In that moment, Darius said, I'm richer than anyone. I don't have money in my pocket. I don't have a fancy car or a big house, but I have her. I have her love, and that's worth more than anything. The words echoed in my mind long after Darius left that night. I had spent 52 years accumulating wealth, building an empire, proving to the world that I was worthy of respect. But no one had ever looked at me the way Mia looked at her father. No one had ever called me the strongest person in the world. I had billions of dollars and not a single person who loved me simply for being myself. An unexpected visitor arrived with Darius. I could hear a second set of footsteps beside his, lighter, quicker, the footsteps of a child. "Sorry to bring her, Miss Hayes," Darius said. "My neighbor had an emergency and I couldn't find anyone else to watch her. I hope you don't mind." A small voice piped up. "Daddy, is this the lady you've been telling me about?" "Yes, sweetheart, this is Miss Hayes. Remember what I said, we need to be quiet and respectful." "But she's sleeping. Can she hear us?" "I believe she can, baby." "So let's talk to her nicely." "Okay." I heard the scraping of a chair being pulled closer to the bed. Then I felt something unexpected, a small, warm hand touching mine. "Hi, Miss Hayes. My name is Mia. I'm 7 years old. My daddy says you were in an accident, but you're going to be okay because you're strong." The child's voice was high and sweet, filled with innocent certainty. "I brought you something." I heard the rustle of paper. "It's a drawing I made. It has flowers and sunshine and butterflies. My teacher says I'm a good artist. I put it on your table so you can see it when you wake up." Darius spoke softly. "That's very kind of you, Mia." "Daddy, do you think she's lonely?" The question hung in the air. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because she's all alone in here. No one's talking to her. It must be scary to be alone when you're sick." My throat tightened even though no muscle moved. "That's why we visit her baby, so she knows she's not alone." Mia squeezed my hand gently. "Miss Hayes, you don't have to be scared. When my mommy went away, I was really sad. I thought I would be alone forever. But Daddy told me that Mommy is still with me right here in my heart." The little girl's voice grew more earnest. "So you're not alone either, okay? We're here with you. And even when we go home, you can keep us in your heart. That way you'll never be by yourself." I had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I had stared down hostile boards and outmaneuvered corporate rivals without flinching. But this child, this innocent 7-year-old girl, had just undone me completely. "You're not alone." 3 simple words that I had never heard in all my years of wealth and power. After Mia fell asleep in the visitor's chair, Darius spoke in a hushed voice. "I'm sorry if she was too much. She's got her mother's heart, always trying to take care of everyone." He was quiet for a moment. "You know, Miss Hayes, I've been thinking about why I keep coming here. At first, I told myself it was because of the promise I made you that night, but it's more than that." I waited, my entire being focused on his words. When Denise was dying, I felt so helpless. I couldn't save her. I couldn't stop what was happening. All I could do was sit there and watch the woman I loved slip away. His voice grew heavy. "Coming here talking to you, it feels like I'm getting a second chance not to save you. I know that's not up to me, but to be there for someone who needs it, to not let another person face the darkness alone." He stood up slowly. "I should get Mia home. She has school tomorrow." I heard him wake the child gently, heard their soft footsteps moving toward the door. And with every step, I felt a growing panic rising inside my frozen body. I wanted to wake up. I wanted to open my eyes and thank them. I wanted to tell Mia that her drawing was beautiful, that her words had meant more than any business deal or accolade I had ever received. But the fear held me back. If I woke up now, what then? I would return to my old life, surrounded by the same vultures who had circled my bed for days. I would have to face the board members plotting against me, the fake friends who only wanted my money, the crushing loneliness that had defined my existence. And worse, if I woke up, Darius would know I had heard everything, every intimate story, every vulnerable confession. Would he be embarrassed, angry? Would he ever come back? I remained still, trapped not only by my body but by my own terror. The door opened again. I heard voices I recognized. The board members had returned along with lawyers and someone claiming to be a distant cousin I had not seen in 20 years. The doctors say there's no sign of improvement. One of the lawyers said, if she doesn't wake up soon, we can invoke the incapacity clause. My cousin spoke up. As her closest living relative, I believe I should be appointed guardian of her estate. I wanted to scream. This man had never called me, never visited, never shown any interest in my life. Now he was circling like the rest of them. The hospital is recommending transfer to a long-term care facility. Another voice added, it would be better for everyone except me. When they finally left, I lay in the darkness, more alone than I had ever been. My empire was crumbling, my body was a prison, and the only people who had shown me genuine kindness were about to disappear from my life. Darius arrived with a heaviness in his step that I had not heard before. Miss Hayes, I have some bad news. I overheard the nurses talking. They're moving you to some facility upstate. He sat down slowly. This might be the last time I can visit you. My heart plummeted. I know you probably can't hear me. The doctors keep saying there's no awareness, but I'm going to talk to you anyway one last time. He reached out and took my hand. It was the first time he had touched me since the night of the accident. I want to thank you, Miss Hayes. You don't even know what you've done for me. Coming here talking to you, it helped me more than you'll ever know. It made me feel like maybe I'm not just some invisible janitor. Maybe my words matter. Maybe my kindness matters. His grip tightened slightly. When I lost Denise, I felt like a part of me died too, but sitting here with you, telling you about my life, about Mia, about everything, it reminded me why I keep going. Because we all need someone to listen, even if they can't respond. He was quiet for a long moment. I couldn't save my wife. I held her hand until the very end, but I couldn't stop her from leaving. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe if I had done something different, worked harder, prayed more, she would still be here. His voice grew thick. But Denise taught me something before she died. She told me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about being there. Just being present, holding their hand in the dark, even when you can't fix what's broken. He exhaled slowly. I'm not going to pretend I can save you, Miss Hayes. I don't have that power. But I hope that somehow in some way you know that someone was here. Someone thought about you. Not because of your money or your company, but because you're a human being, and every human being deserves to be seen. Darius stood up and gently released my hand. Goodbye, Miss Hayes. I hope you find peace. Whatever happens next, I hope you know that you mattered to me. He walked toward the door, his footsteps slow and heavy. Mia prays for you every night. She asks God to help you wake up so you can smile. She says everyone deserves to smile. The door handle turned. Take care of yourself. And if there's any part of you that can hear me, please know this. You are not alone. You were never alone. I was always right here. Always. The door clicked shut, and in the suffocating silence of my prison, I made my choice. I could not let him walk away. I could not spend the rest of my life being transferred to facilities discussed by lawyers, picked apart by relatives who had never loved me. I wanted to live, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a woman who had finally learned what truly mattered. I wanted to see Mia's drawing. I wanted to thank Darius for every word he had spoken. I wanted to feel the sun on my face and know that I was more than my bank account. For the first time in decades, I wanted to be human again, and I would fight with everything I had to make it happen. I did not sleep that night. Inside my frozen body, my mind raced through every moment of my 52 years. I saw myself as a young woman, full of hope and ambition, believing that love would find me. I saw the man who had taken that belief and shattered it, leaving me with nothing but debt and a broken heart. I saw the walls I had built afterward, brick by brick, until no one could reach me. I had told myself those walls made me strong. I had told myself that needing no one was the ultimate freedom. But now, lying in the darkness, I understood the truth. I had not built a fortress, I had built a prison, and I had locked myself inside it for 3 decades. I thought about the executives who had stood over my bed, calculating my worth in dollars and shares. I thought about the friends who had taken photographs and whispered about my possessions. Not one of them had spoken to me the way Darius had. Not one of them had seen me as anything more than a commodity. Then I thought about Mia, that innocent child who had held my hand and said 3 words that had broken through every wall I had ever constructed. You're not alone. I thought about Darius standing at the door saying goodbye, believing I would never hear him. The pain in his voice, the gratitude he had expressed for being allowed to sit with me, to speak to me, to matter to someone. He had thanked me, a janitor who earned barely enough to feed his daughter had thanked a billionaire for giving him purpose. I understood now what I had been missing my entire life. It was not money, it was not power, it was not the respect that came from fear or the admiration that came from wealth. It was connection, simple, honest, human connection, and I would not let it slip away. The morning arrived with the sound of footsteps and hushed voices outside my door. The transport team will be here soon, a nurse said. Has anyone notified her family? Her cousin signed the transfer papers. Everything is in order. I heard the door open. Medical staff entered, checking monitors, adjusting equipment, preparing my body for the journey to a facility where I would likely spend the rest of my days. Then I heard another voice at the doorway, a voice I recognized. Excuse me, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I was wondering if I could say goodbye. It was Darius. The nurse hesitated. Sir, she's being transferred soon. We really don't have time for visitors. Please, just 2 minutes. I was with her the night of the accident. I just want to say goodbye. A long silence followed. Then the nurse sighed. 2 minutes, that's all. Darius walked into the room. I heard him approach the bed, heard his breath catch slightly as he looked at me. Miss Hayes, he said softly, I don't know if you can hear me. I've never known. But I had to come one more time. He moved closer. I wanted to tell you that meeting you changed something in me. I was just going through the motions before, working, coming home, taking care of Mia. But talking to you, it reminded me why kindness matters, why showing up for people matters, even when they can't thank you for it. His voice grew thick. I hope wherever they take you, someone talks to you, someone holds your hand, someone treats you like you're still here. Because I believe you are. I believe you've been here the whole time. He took a step back. Goodbye, Miss Hayes. I'll never forget you. I heard him turn toward the door and something inside me shattered. Every fear, every doubt, every wall I had built came crashing down in a single moment. I could not let him leave. I could not spend whatever time I had left being shipped to a facility surrounded by strangers, dying alone. I wanted to live, not as Rebecca Hayes, the billionaire, not as the CEO, the investor, the woman on the Forbes list. I wanted to live as someone who could love and be loved. Someone who could smile at a child's drawing and mean it. Someone who could hold another person's hand without calculating what I might gain. I focused every ounce of my will on my right hand, the hand that Darius had held at the accident scene, the hand that Mia had touched while promising I was not alone. Move. Nothing happened. Move. My finger trembled, just barely, just enough. The heart monitor beeped slightly faster. I pushed harder. I imagined Darius walking through that door, disappearing from my life forever. I imagined spending years in a sterile room, trapped in my body with no one who cared whether I lived or died. My finger moved again, then my wrist, then my entire hand shifted against the bedsheet. The nurse gasped, Doctor, she's moving. I did not stop. I poured everything I had into my eyelids, fighting against the weight that had held them closed. Light began to seep through, blurry at first, then slowly sharpening. The first thing I saw was the ceiling, white tiles, fluorescent lights. The second thing I saw was Darius Thompson, frozen in the doorway, staring at me with an expression of complete disbelief. My lips parted, my throat burned from days of disuse. I tried to speak, but only a ragged whisper escaped. Wait! Darius did not move. His eyes were wide, glistening. Doctors rushed into the room, nurses shouted orders, machines beeped, and alarms sounded, but I ignored all of it. I kept my gaze fixed on the man in the doorway. I swallowed painfully, forcing my voice to work despite the agony in my throat. I heard you. The words came out broken and barely audible. Darius took a step closer, then another until he was standing beside my bed. You heard me? I managed the faintest nod. I struggled to form each word, my voice cracking and fading. Everything. A breath. Denise. Another breath. Mia. I winced from the effort. The strongest person in the world. Tears spilled down Darius's cheeks, not from embarrassment or shame, from something far deeper. I gathered the last of my strength for one more sentence. Thank you. My voice was almost gone now, for talking to me like a human being. Darius reached down and took my hand just as he had done on the night of the accident. You're welcome, he said. You're so welcome. I sat in a wheelchair in the hospital garden. The autumn sun warmed my face as I watched leaves drift lazily to the ground. My recovery was slow. The doctor said it could take months before I regained full mobility, but I did not mind. For the first time in my life, I was not in a hurry. I had fired James Harrington and the board members who had plotted against me. I had dismissed my cousin's claim to guardianship. I had restructured my will to ensure that my wealth would serve a purpose beyond enriching people who had never loved me. The Darius Thompson Foundation was now in its early stages, a charitable trust dedicated to supporting single parents and their children. Not because I wanted to save anyone or be seen as generous, but because I finally understood that money meant nothing if it did not touch lives. Darius still worked at the hospital. I had offered him financial assistance enough to never work another day in his life. He had refused. Miss Hayes, you already gave me something more valuable than money, he had said. You listened. You heard me. That's worth more than any check you could write. The only thing he accepted was a scholarship fund for Mia's education, not charity. An investment in a child's future. I heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Mia running across the garden toward me, a piece of paper clutched in her small hands. Darius followed behind, a gentle smile on his face. Miss Rebecca, I made you something. Mia reached the wheelchair and thrust the drawing into my lap. It showed 3 figures standing beneath a bright yellow sun. A tall man with dark skin, a small girl with pigtails, and a woman with long hair holding both their hands. That's you, Mia said, pointing at the woman. You're our friend now. Daddy said friends are people who show up for each other. And you showed up, so now we're friends forever. I looked at the drawing, then at Mia, then at Darius, and for the first time and longer than I could remember, I smiled. A real smile. Not the practiced expression I had worn for cameras and business partners. A smile that came from somewhere deep inside me, from a place I had forgotten existed. Darius stood beside the wheelchair, watching his daughter bounce excitedly. He caught my eye and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. We were not lovers, perhaps we never would be, but we were something rarer, something more precious. We were friends, true friends, built not on money or status, but on the simple foundation of being seen and heard. I looked up at the autumn sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the warmth of Mia's hand in mine. I had spent my whole life believing that strength meant needing no one, that wealth meant lacking nothing. But lying in that hospital bed, I had learned the opposite. Sometimes what heals us is not being saved. It is being seen, being heard, being treated like a human being, and that I now understood could never be bought with money. As I lay trapped in that hospital bed, my body completely still, while my mind screamed in the silence, the most profound lesson of my life crashed over me like a wave I never saw coming. I had spent 52 years building an empire, chasing every deal and accolade, convinced that wealth and power would shield me from heartbreak. But when the crash left me locked inside myself, I discovered how empty all of it really was. My so-called friends and executives hovered like vultures, whispering about my shares and my penthouse, never once seeing the woman behind the billions. Then Darius Thompson, that gentle janitor with the worn work shoes and southern drawl, walked in. He didn't want anything from me. He just sat there, sharing stories of his late wife Denise, his little girl Mia, and the quiet battles he fought every day just to keep them fed and loved. His simple kindness, his promise that I wasn't alone, cracked open the fortress I'd built around my heart. And when tiny Mia slipped her warm hand into mine and whispered that I could keep them in my heart forever, something inside me finally broke free. I learned that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or boardrooms. It's in those raw, honest moments when someone truly sees you, hears you, and shows up without expecting a thing in return. No fortune on earth can buy that kind of connection. It heals you in ways money never could. If this story touched something deep in your soul like it did mine, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's the one moment of real human kindness that changed everything for you? Drop it below and let's keep this conversation going. And if you're craving more stories that remind us what truly matters, hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and join our family. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to share the next one with you.